Welcome to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast, where we look inside the mind of seven-figure entrepreneurs to see how they amplify their business and amplify their life. Let's welcome today's guest. Welcome to the Amplify to Seven Figures podcast. Today's guest helps you deploy better systems in your business. He wrote the Impact Framework, available at redbeardimpact.com, and hosts a podcast at Redbeard Radio, where he has interviewed the likes of Stu McLaren and Jeff Hunter. When he's not working, he loves gardening, mountain climbing, and sailing. Please give a very warm welcome to the show, Brian Redbeard Keith. How you doing?
Thank you, Paul. It is wonderful to be here, and it's always fun to get introduced because you feel like, oh, you get to walk out on a stage, like, woo! There's people partying in the background. Their cell phones are waving back and forth. So happy to be here.
Oh, it's awesome stuff, and you haven't stopped smiling since you got here as well, so I love it.
Guilty.
Just that kind of guy. So, Brian, we live in this world where information's so freely available, right? And in fact, I heard a stat recently that like the amount of information online doubles every 6 months. So why do you think most people and businesses fail at moving their clients from that inspiration stage to experience that long-term change?
They don't have a clear transformation they're selling. When I was taking Stu McLaren's Tribe course, that's one of the things he talks about constantly is transformation. That if you're not clear about what's the result state after someone walks through the journey you're taking them on, then they're not going to be that excited because they're being distracted by Twitter and by relationship and by their kids and by the news. And so your transformation you're selling has to be so powerful to get them to ignore the fact they just heard that there's gas lines or toilet papers out of stock.
And that makes a lot of sense, right? I think there's so much distraction and shiny objects and everything in the world right now that a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just going to move over to this thing. Do you notice that a lot with, because I know you've got your own membership as well?
Yeah, the Redbeard Accelerator is my membership where I help people go and deploy the right systems in their business. That's targeted at six-figure entrepreneurs from startup all the way through there. And one of the problems is someone knows their field of expertise. Like let's take Dr. Philip Ovadia. He's a heart surgeon, travels all over the place doing heart surgery. He's starting his concierge medical practice. But how do you take your field of expertise and transform it into a business where you can now be a highly paid health coach who's also a doctor, right? And actually can write prescriptions and all that. There's 1,000 ways to do it. There's 1,000 coaches out there. How do you focus on the 5 things that actually matter and then do them in the right order? That's what so often with the 7-figure clients I've worked with, it's really hard to do. Even if you have the right 5 things out of the 1,000 things, if you do them in the wrong order, you're doomed.
So what's the right order?
It's a great question. It depends on you and depends on what you're actually good at. You've heard of the book, Who Not How? And understanding what you're good at and what you actually should be handing to someone else to do. Oftentimes I find traffic is one of the biggest problems where even if, let's say you're good at your thing and then you're good at delivering your thing. Oh, wonderful. Let's even say you're good at selling your thing once you get on the phone with somebody. How do you actually fill up that funnel in a way? Oftentimes the people who are really good at doing a thing, let's say the doctor who's a heart surgeon, okay, he's really good at that. But that's not the same thing as being really good at generating traffic from social media or podcasts. Different skill sets. And most people don't have both. So you got to figure out, are you actually a traffic person and you're not going to focus on developing your craft over here? Okay, so maybe you're actually an affiliate marketing play is what you're doing. But if you're really good at this expertise thing, then who are you going to have on your team in what fashion to go and do other things? Like I don't edit my own podcast, right? I have a team that does that. I don't even choose the titles of the podcast episodes. My team does. And sometimes she says, I'm not sure. So here's 3 to choose from. She writes all of them and I occasionally edit them, but I'm not going to use my brain to write even subject lines or even titles for podcast episodes. I have someone else for that, right? Because I'm not going to be as good. And I don't do things like schedule to get the podcast out the door. I could, but my podcast team, like Rihanna's really, really diligent and really on it with the timing and just rock solid reliable in that way. I'm going to spend my time doing the high-end delivery thing and just say, okay, the traffic part of things like the manipulation of all the systems, I'm going to farm that out.
Yeah, and it makes a lot of sense, when it comes to that stuff and that crossover period that people have between, I need to do everything to I need to put the systems and processes in place. And so here, here's what's interesting is you say, you help people put better systems in the business. How do you systematize the systematization?
It depends on what stage they're at, and when it goes from you need to understand a concept you don't understand so you can do it yourself versus go talk to somebody else. I just interviewed a CFO, Jen Bro. I got to work with her on a mutual client for a while, for over a year. So I got to see how she works. And sometimes people come to me and say, here's where I'm at. Here's the kinds of financial questions I have. And I can say, great, read this book. Or great, here's the concept that you don't get yet that you need to get. Other times I say, okay, given the size of company you're at, like if you've hit the 7 figures, you're not going to talk to me about your financial questions. I'm going to listen only long enough to assess, talk to Jen Bro. That's it. Because when you get to that stage, or like business coaching, if you're at in the 6 figures, there's all kinds of business coaching kind of questions. I'm going to say, yeah, do this, do that. Join the accelerator. Let's talk about it more. But at some point I say, okay, that's a Charles question. You need to talk to Charles Gaudette, who only does business coaching for 7 and 8 figure businesses. And so go and say, and he's going to systematize that for you. Jen's going to systematize your finances for you. At some point, the answer is not how do you better train your team? No, the answer is find someone else who knows that one thing so well, and then go pay them well enough that they're going to do a fantastic job.
And that who, not the how as well, that comes from, is that Dan Sullivan?
It's him and Ben Hardy, I think, wrote that book together, though I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, because I think Dan Sullivan is his concept, and Ben Hardy was I'll write it for you.
Which is a great way to go about life.
Exactly. Collaboration is key. So, what you seem to be as well, Brian, a big fan of email. So, what would you say you've seen some of the best like email split tests to run?
I think one of the most interesting things is to challenge your assumptions about how your audience likes to hear from you. I have the brand Redbeard Brian. He mountain climbs, he sword fights, he's a marksmanship instructor. Very exciting. Is that actually the best way to talk about a given thing? For example, if you go get my book at redbeardimpact.com, you'll get an onboarding campaign. And in there, you'll have crazy subject lines like the screaming was coming from down the hill. You're gripped, you have to open it right. And then you'll come across the story of when I was on a mountain going and helping this young girl who lost a tooth in the snow. But I'm assuming that subject line is what's interesting. Now, so far, the open rates look pretty good, but I could be wrong. And so if you have enough traffic saying, okay, let's assume 80% of my traffic is going to go towards my best guess about how my brand speaks about this topic to that audience. But what's the other 20%? Now, in my case, I already have an extreme larger than life brand. So the other 20% is more formulaic, perhaps more specific, maybe talking to more introverted people who don't like as much excitement and fluff.
Yeah.
And so the same story that's about this, and even the email might be different, right? Maybe I'm not going to talk about systems in terms of this girl losing a tooth. And really, and in that particular case, that means about kindness, which is my second core value. Maybe kindness, if I was talking to a more suit and tie business audience that likes to have things less sensationalized, it might be a completely different subject line and a different email. And then you can set up a split test and you can say, okay, well, I'm assuming that I could be wrong because you always can be. And I'm assuming that I don't know what the results of the test would be because you never do. If you know the results of a test before you started it, it's a crap test.
Yeah.
Like
no point doing the test in the first place.
Yeah, like subject lines. Should you have complete sentences with punctuation and capitalization, or should you have things like all lowercase, the screaming was coming from down the hill? Would that perform better? Now, the smaller the variations you have, the more traffic you need to actually find something out. If you're currently doing no split testing with your subject lines, the best thing to do is have 2 really, really different ones. Redbeard core value number 2, : kindness. That's really different from the screaming was coming from down the hill. I would probably see an open rate difference, right?
Yeah.
And then I could probably take that and say, what else should I be testing? So for everybody out there, look at what's either driving the most sales or what's getting the most traffic of all your emails. And then the subject line is usually the easiest place to start, though there's other kinds of stuff you can do. But open rates is a great place if you're doing no testing. and then say, what is the opposite of my current brand message and the opposite of the way that I'm currently doing it? And try it and see what happens.
And the interesting thing around that as well is like following that down the funnel, because sometimes like that, the example of screaming down the hill, yeah, you may get great open rates, but if what's inside then doesn't resonate with the subject line, and it's just like a clickbaity subject line or something like that, then you haven't got the clicks through. Or maybe, hey, you got great opens and great clicks, but one of those emails that was the real logical one actually got significantly less opens but got sales.
Where's the pitch? Is the pitch in the boring one? Now, in my case, I'm a big fan of the idea that all emails are boring. So all of these emails are all story-based. It's telling a story about mountain climbing, search and rescue, sword fighting, shooting guns, because no one cares about anything, right? Everything's boring, and Twitter's right there, right there, as is crazy national, international news. So in my case, everything's a story, and that's just how I'm teaching everything. But I could be wrong. Maybe instead of hearing a story of a part of the impact framework and how and the role of the action ladder, maybe what you actually want, you, the audience who's actually going to buy, right? The buyers, the qualified people. Maybe what you want is a step-by-step guide, mostly devoid of emotional language, as opposed to a story of how I wimped out and did not jump in an alpine lake, which is what it currently is. I could be wrong, and I don't know who's going to buy. You're exactly right.
And yeah, on that note as well, I remember seeing Dean Jackson with his 9-word email. It's like, are you still interested in blank? That's it. Nothing else. And then that gets a response for those people who haven't been engaged, and then brings everyone back into the process. So it's like you say, test it, because without testing, you don't know what's going to happen.
Well, and it can change. So you could be doing exactly what you tested last year worked perfectly, and then something changes. There's all kinds of things that worked really well, and then the pandemic hit, and then suddenly people were distracted, or they were afraid. Their emotions, the people you were emailing, they're still the same human beings, but their perspective on the world drastically changed. What if you're trying to market to someone right now who's, let's say, in Georgia, where it's still hard to get gas for their car, and you're spending a lot of ad money, and it worked great a month ago, and you're like, why is my return on ad spend dropped so much? I was making money and now I'm losing money. Well, that's because the person you're talking to is thinking, they're on their phone trying to figure out which gas station to get gas from. And that's more important than your ad. So you got to know, like, you got to just be open to the idea that what worked for you for that audience last month or yesterday might fail today.
It's really, really interesting stuff, that is. And I think a lot can be taken away from that testing process and understanding where the buyer is in the journey. So let's talk a little bit about the podcast, right? You've interviewed a lot of people, and as someone who's interviewed a ton of people, and firstly, how does someone start a podcast? And then secondly, why would you want to do one?
Great. So the first question was, how do you start one? In my case, I was inspired enough by John Lee Dumas and other people like him. I decided I'm just going to go do this. And I assumed that I know when I look back, episode 1 is going to suck. Not because the guest sucks. Gray Jenkins is awesome, but because I'm different, right? And I thought, when I get to episode 100, I'm going to look back and it's going to be awful. If this is true, if you know this is true, then it doesn't matter how awful it is, as long as it's not like your clients disown you awful, right? So you should probably just start it. So my very first episode, which you can grab it right now, though I'm going to replace it shortly, it's 58 seconds. Wow. It's me talking about my values, what I believe. That's it. And I thought, I don't know what I'm doing, and I know it's going to suck. I'm just going to publish it knowing I'll replace it later. And so I did. And it turns out a lot of people, when they listen to one episode and they enjoy it, they go back to the very first episode. And so now it turns out like a lot of people have listened to this 58-second I believe episode. So just get started. And just let go of being good, not even perfect. Let go of being good, and then start. And in my case, I like to stop me if you've heard this one. I like to sometimes plan things out for too long before actually doing them. And I know this about myself, right? So I thought, okay, well, the right way to do this is to get 3 episodes to 10 episodes recorded, put them on a schedule, nail your schedule, get a good intro and outro, all this. Instead I just started in the first place. Now, episode 92 dropped this week. So I've recorded like 120 or 100 ish, somewhere in there episodes now. So I'm well beyond the 100 range in terms of what I've recorded. So what am I doing now at 100? I said I get the first 100 episodes to learn. And then starting with episode 100 or so, I need to get more serious. I need to get my lead flow more serious. I need to get my production quality more serious. I need to do everything better. So now I went ahead and I joined Podcasters Paradise. That's John Lee Dumas's membership. So I'm active in there now and I'm learning from other people in there. What else have I done? I continue to evolve the tools I'm using. I initially hired a friend to go run the podcast, and then I helped her spin off her own podcasting company, riverwoodmedia.com. And at Riverwood Media, Rihanna and her family, they handle everything now. So I do the recordings, I decide who I'm going to book, and then it goes away. She does editing, she creates social media art, she does all this other system stuff. So I'm not distracted. But now, episode 100, I'm thinking, okay, now knowing what I now know, what are the better systems? So like we're switching from using Wave to using Repurpose for audio snippets. And we're doing things like that. We're switching from using Hootsuite to using Meet Edgar, because now I've learned more about what's really best. We're switching from Rev to PodScribe for our transcripts. And so I'm retooling everything and getting back into the very specific details. Even how do we choose audio snippets? How many audio snippets per episode? When do they get published on social media? And so I'm going to get deep into it again, rewrite all the procedures, hand them to her and her team, and then peace out until episode 200 or so. Right? And then I'll probably go revisit it again and say, okay, knowing what I now know, episode 100 systems, boring, horrible. I'll probably go back and revisit it. Hopefully by episode, 1000, I'll have a clue. So that's how to get started.
So it's very much a working in sprints, right? So you go, okay, cool. Let's test, tweak. Personally, I think being a data junkie, I'm a little bit more of like, okay, cool, I'll go and do 5 episodes and then go, right, what can I improve? And then come back to something else. But that's basically get to the 100 and then sprint, change everything. Well, not change everything, but change the things that need to be changed and then move on to the next thing. Is that about right?
Yeah. And give yourself permission to be wrong, that you don't have to build a great system. Like my first quote art system was, I'm going to go get a transcript through Rev, or heck, even just listen to the podcast and manually type out what you hear, and then go put it in Canva with a picture of the person, and then put it on Facebook. That works. Now at a nicer level, okay, now it's branded with your company colors, it has your company logo, it's the same font all the time. You use different headshots depending on which quote it is. You add an audio snippet that's the 30 seconds around what they're saying. Like, you can get fancier, but you don't have to start. And for most of us, unless you already have a good audience, a strong audience, when you start off, you're not going to have many listeners. So it's okay. It's not like, oh, I'm going to put this live and 1 million people are going to know that I'm horrible. Almost never the case. Mostly your mom's going to know you're horrible, but she's going to love you anyways. At this point, I'm going to hit 8,000 downloads maybe in the next week or two. And I've been at this for 2 years. So one of the things I said is, it's okay if I don't make a single dollar for a couple of years. And that's a very different attitude, because I have a coaching business. That's what I do. Business coach, outsource COO, and the Redbeard Accelerator as my membership. That's what I'm making money from. The podcast is one channel of leads for this business. If you're trying to make money from podcasting, that's a different reality. If you're using it for a lead flow for your existing business, which is my thing, then it's okay. You can say, I'm going to start this thing. I'm going to be pouring money into it and time into it for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then it will start to make me a lot of money later. But know that going in, like, what's your expectation?
And that kind of answers to an extent the why would anyone want to do a podcast? So particularly for you, what was is why you started it different from why you continue to do it?
Ooh, what a good question. I think it's similar. What I did not expect about the podcast is how much I could use that to connect with people, not just in the business vein. When I started off, I was substantially more focused on only business topics. And now as I grow and as I get more active on Twitter at Redbeard Brian, I start to look at more overall people. So I say that the podcast is about 2/3 deploying the right systems in your business, about 1/3 mindset and culture. So in the 2/3, we have how to use text message marketing, intro guide to Facebook ads, membership sites, In the mindset and culture, we have Keep CEO Clayton Mask talking about what to do when the voice in your head tells you you'll fail. That's episode number 5. So it's the successful guy saying, like, here's times where I've felt like I'm just complete failure. And here's how I've fought back against that. Or you have John Robb talking about the nature of consensus reality or networks tribalism. These ideas around how we communicate across in our current information space, polluted information, and how to really be a better human being in the current world we're in. Is that directly related to your business systems? Not really. But episode 91 on consensus reality, if you understand that, then you can sort of get, it's like a deeper level. Text message marketing is up here. At a deeper level, consensus reality is about what do you and your people you're talking to believe? And in what ways is that similar? Well, that ends up actually supporting a lot of the communicating with your clients, even though it's not like a here's 3 action steps in your business kind of episode. So I've got to go former friendship with John Robb and some of the other people I'm trying to get on the podcast. I've had one guy so far talk about how strength training makes you a better husband and father. That's cool. Or I just had another guy say he was going to go book in for that. So I get to go talk with people who are elevating humans in all these ways that I'm not an expert in. I'm not an expert at strength training, but I can talk to people who are, and I can bring you the audience. Like even an episode this week I recorded was with a woman who has a business that is all about training and supporting mom entrepreneurs because she's a business coach and she just had her first kid. And so now she's helping moms who have small children develop their businesses. Guess what? I don't know a lot about that, but I've interviewed her and now Jillian Kendrick can go and share that with people. So getting to amplify those voices that are serving people in a generationally powerful way. I think I would have said 2 years ago, that sounds fun, but now I can look at that and go, yeah, I also like getting leads for the accelerator. That's cool. But to get to go and promote these ideas that are going to go support us as we walk through the nature of AI taking over everything. Yeah. Fascinating work.
Yeah. And a lot of people that I speak to, they talk about relationships and say that we're almost, the more we go towards AI, the more we actually go towards human relationships.
100%.
And it's that augment of the two. And maybe, everyone looks at like Facebook's dead, podcasting's dead, everything like that. Podcasting, if anything, has become probably even more prominent than it's ever been because everyone's on the go all the time, right?
Everyone's on the go. And if you listened to my entire catalog, which at this point is 92 episodes live right now, you would hear so many of my life stories. One of my persistent jokes is I say, well, it wouldn't be an episode if I didn't have some embarrassing personal story. So it's the equivalent of sitting down at a pub for, 92 episodes. That's a lot of hours, man. And telling stories, right? And so in terms of you do business with people you know, like, and trust, the very best possible way you can get a hold of me and understand who I am, it's not listening to a sales webinar, though that's cool too. It's go listen to the podcast because you'll hear about my ancestors, my dreams about the future, my sword fighting stories, my mountain climbing stories, and you'll know me in a way. Well, I'll tell you this. So here's what the current world looks like, Paul. When I first met my now fiance, we're getting married in September.
Congratulations.
What did we do? Thank you. What did we do? I went and listened to an interview she did when she was being interviewed. And then I handed her a podcast where I was a guest.
Wow.
And we had this crazy, that's how you get to know someone. We're not Facebook stalking people. We're podcast stalking each other.
That is
spoiler. It turned out great. We liked what we heard.
Yeah.
We got to hear these stories before we even met each other, right? So it's more authentic. It's not me, I'm going to go look good to this woman. No, it's not me trying to look cool. It's me being interviewed by a friend about business and whatever else. So it's more
a modern
honest.
Mixtape.
It is. It's a mixtape. If you ask, I had a friend ask me, I said, okay, your podcast looks cool. Which episodes are your favorite? And I thought, it's an impossible question, but I answered anyways. And I gave him, here's 4, I think I said. And given the person who was asking, here's 4. And so I can say, here's the body of work, and you can see who I am. And I can point you at, of 92 episodes, which of these people, if you only listen to one, which one is the best one for you to listen to? And with your audience of 7-figure entrepreneurs, I already know the answer. It's Charles Gaudet, because he is an expert business coach to 7- and 8-figure entrepreneurs. When the Jen Bro episodes go live in the next couple months, the CFO and outsourced CFO, she's the other one. Because if you understand the mindset of the seven-figure entrepreneur and you understand the financial needs of the seven-figure entrepreneur and you have someone on your corner for that, your chances of sustaining and expanding skyrocketed. So yeah, don't listen to some of these other ones about other interesting things. Ignore them. And I can focus your attention, which you don't have enough of.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it goes back to that personalization and segmentation where, when you're building resources and stuff, and it's like, hey, listen, go and listen to this because you've got something for everyone without it being like skewing from your thing, which is really cool. So, want to dive into an important question, and a question that we ask every time on the Amplify Seven Figures podcast, and that is, what do you want to be remembered for when you die?
I don't want to be remembered directly.
At all?
Well, maybe by my grandkids, but specifically, I want the results that I show to be remembered. But if I do my job well enough, it will not be because my name is in lights. I think the best thing I can do is by helping thousands of entrepreneurs deploy better systems in their business such that their families are healthier, better taken care of, that their customers have a better experience, and furthermore, that those entrepreneurs are better able to support their communities and solve the problems closest to them. For any problem in the world, whether it's childhood obesity in America, whether it's bad water in Nigeria, whatever, girls not being allowed to read in Afghanistan, every kind of problem is solved by local entrepreneurs having more money. And so the more local entrepreneurs can ethically, in a generationally sound manner, generate cash flow, and they can say, that's really annoying. I know the answer to that problem right over there. I think that's the best way to solve almost everything. Because generally the people far away using money that's not theirs don't have as good answers as the people who are right there experiencing the problem. So I want to go empower entrepreneurs everywhere to go and have better answers to their own problems through more cash flow, which comes from deploying more of the right systems. Bonus, when you deploy more of the right systems, you have more free time. If you have more free time, basically everyone starts to think about what can I do to make my neighborhood better or my community? What problems are around that I see that I think I see more clearly than that neighbor or that politician or someone else, that celebrity. What do I think I'm going to fix? And then they go after it. And so I want to go encourage that person. And then the results of that person's work, that'll be my legacy, but it won't have my name attached to it.
So there's a couple of points there. Firstly, being that guy behind the curtain, which is super cool. And then also, our theme of the year is leverage. That's the big theme. Everything's like, how can we create more leverage? And over the last couple of months, I've taken myself a lot out of a lot of the day-to-day implementation, doing very, very little of that part. So I totally agree with you. What I've started then going, what else could we do? And then I'm starting to think about, okay, which charities do we want to donate to? What causes do we want to encourage as well? How does that link back to the company and the company values and everything like that? That's the power of having the right systems and processes in the business, because you can do that.
Here's my leverage. I work with people where in terms of my coaching business or my outsourced COO business, part of that, I work with people where I have 1 million person impact, and I count for every person I get to help in user. I assume that if, let's say you, the client, are really good at what you do, so you make their lives better. Let's say they impact 10 people around them, between family, friends, coworkers, whatever. So if you sell directly to consumers, you need to be serving at least 100,000 people on your email list, whatever. If you work with business owners or coaches, and maybe it's more like a 10,000 person list, assuming they each touch at least 10 clients who at least touch 10 people in their lives. So I look at that leverage thing, and I think that's one way I measure my business. It's not just cash flow, it's what's the impact flow? How many millions of people in terms of 10 per end user am I at right now? Because the more that goes up, then whether or not most of those people never know my name, right? Like I've written a lot of emails where no one knows who I am, or crafted strategies or whatever else, but I know, and that's the other payoff, right? It's cash and it's also impact.
Yeah, I love it. That's fantastic. So Brian, what is one quick win that people can use to amplify their business today?
I think stop for 5 minutes, turn off everything else, take out a sheet of paper, maybe even take out something this big, like a single note card, and then accelerate 10 years into the future. So like 2030, and write down the big story of your last decade. The big story. It might be a number. It might be a project. might be something else. But in terms of your business, what's the big story that you've written down? And so in my case, it would be, what would be on the here, right? This right here would be, I've helped 1,000 people accelerate their businesses and increase their impact in their communities. That's the story. And then you put it on your monitor, or maybe you take it out each week and you look at it and you say, okay, even at the start of the week, is the week I have scheduled, is that congruent with this? Or is this schedule someone else? If it's someone else other than this, then either I lied about this or I'm being negligent about my schedule, and then adjust accordingly.
I like that. And in fact, I think it was Monday this week, I created something called a mind movie. So I've heard it from a few entrepreneurs now, especially 7-figure and 8-figure entrepreneurs. They do something called a mind movie where they'll create a slideshow of all the things that they want and all the impact that they want to make. And then you'll watch that every morning. And I've watched it every morning this week, and it's amazing because I'm waking up each morning and I've got this different level of focus towards the end goal because of it. So I don't know, have you ever done mind movies or anything like that?
I have not done that. I have at different times had scattered around like Post-it notes, or at one point it was, I would take out quotes and cut them and put them above doors. So that when I would walk through a door, I'd see something above and I'd read it and just go fill my environment with certain kinds of information. And so that's part of like, how do you communicate with yourself? And I love it. Have you seen the movie? Is it 30 or 40 First Dates?
Yeah, 40 First Dates.
Where she's brain damaged, and then she watches that. And spoiler alert, okay? The end of the movie, she wakes up in a sailboat, though she doesn't know she's in a sailboat, and she watches the movie of her life because she can't remember the past.
Yeah,
and that's the stage for her day, and she's overjoyed because she now knows who she is, and she's been reminded of what she's forgotten. So that idea, I never heard it put as a actual video you watch every day. That's really interesting.
Yeah, and then when you put music over it as well, and so I showed it to my wife, and the song that I chose was the African version of Paradise by Coldplay. So you know that there's a version with Alex Boye and the piano guys, so it's called Pepperny, and Pepperny is African for paradise. So I was like, well, you want to live in paradise, and the song just like the hook gets in your head. So I'm like jumping in the shower in the morning, all I go da 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 da, and it's going round and round. So then you create that trigger. So that's really interesting. I love the way you put that as well about the one quick win. So that's fantastic. So Brian, where can people find out more about you?
If you want to be inspired while also learning more about deploying systems in your business, you're going to check out Redbeard Radio at redbeard.am, or just tell your phone to play Redbeard Radio. There's also an Android app. If you're ready to take some more action, you're going to go to redbeardimpact.com, download the Impact Framework book, which is going to give you a conceptual frame to help you understand why you're winning and why you're not winning in your business, and help you figure out what you need to do to solve that.
Fantastic. So that's go to redbeardimpact.com, or if you want to go and listen to the podcast, which you certainly should, go to redbeard.am. You've been listening to the Amplify to 7 Figures podcast with me, Paul Ace, and my amazing guest, Brian Keith. Thank you for being on the show. Remember, amplify your business and amplify your life. Have a great day. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to the Amplify to 7 Figures podcast. To access the show notes, episodes, and this month's giveaway, head over to www.amplify7figures.com. Remember, amplify your business, amplify your life.